We are doing a panel discussion now about real estate tokenization, but together with the organizers of Blueprint, we agreed to do like a little intro first, a 10-minute intro, so everyone can get on the same page. So very briefly about DigiShares, we are a market-leading provider of solutions for tokenization of real estate assets. We provide a platform for tokenization that you can use yourself to tokenize your assets, giving you the ability to manage investor onboarding, the fundraise, share cap table, and also facilitate trading among the investors that you onboard. It's an end-to-end white-label solution. It's highly customizable, integratable. You can configure it with a variety of configuration options to match exactly what you need. We also work with a number of legal partners around the world to make sure that we and you are compliant. We work with securities, everything. If you tokenize real estate or you get real estate-backed tokens, it always becomes securities. So in relation to the SEC, I can say that it's fully supported by them, and we are doing exactly what the SEC wants because they prefer everything to be a security. There's no issue with them. We are also soon launching the world's first real estate or blockchain-based real estate exchange in Q4 here in the US. Tokenization itself is, of course, something that happens on the chain, on the blockchain. The blockchain can be viewed as a kind of global network or global Excel sheet or global database where there is a high degree or total consensus about the contents. So if you consider the blockchain as a global Excel sheet, you can view the rows as the wallets. The wallets owned by individuals and companies, and the columns can be viewed as the contents of these wallets. Bitcoin, Ethereum, digital securities, digital currencies, and so on. And this sort of global chain maintains massive incentives to keep the information correct within it, massive disincentives to introduce faulty information, and so on. So it is a global network that allows us to facilitate transactions with securities, digital currencies, and so on. And it's available for software companies like us to build applications on top of, to introduce a lot of new innovation. So basically, tokenization is the process of representing ownership rights with tokens on the chain. So you can tokenize an LLC that owns the property, and you basically tokenize the shares of that company, and you'd get tokenized securities or tokenized shares. This is a typical way to do it. I think 95% of our clients have done it this way. It's a way that is easily recognized by regulators and by legal firms. It's also a way that gives a high degree of investor protection for investors. The tokenization space has been predicted to grow extremely fast the next few years to a total value of $4 trillion by 2030 by Citibank and by other leading companies in the space. Tokenization has a lot of benefits that are briefly described here. Of course, with tokenization, you can digitize, modernize, and automate workflows related to investor onboarding, subscription, and trading, and get a massively reduced administrative cost. This automation, this high degree of automation, allows you to fractionalize and to handle thousands of investors as easily as you can handle 10 or 20 investors today. This, in turn, allows you to reduce the ticket size from 100,000 down to maybe 100 or 1,000 or $10,000 and make it more accessible for retail and smaller investors. You can also enable trading very easily with this type of technology because you can control the transactions via a software system outside the existing financial ecosystem. So you can facilitate peer-to-peer trading directly from wallet to wallet in a way that has no counterparty risk using a smart contract. This can be done both internally via a platform like our system or also externally on exchange. So basically you can get full control using your own platform. You can automate, you can reduce cost, you can make your assets liquid and tradable. Just by making an asset tradable, you can actually increase the value of the asset itself by 20 to 30%. This is called the illiquidity premium, and it has to do with the inability of investors to exit the investment before the maturation of the investment itself, which normally results in a loss. You can open up for retail investors due to decreased ticket size, and you can make the assets more attractive to institutional investors because they become more liquid. Finally, in the future, within a few years, we will also be able to open up to highly competitive, highly efficient lending opportunities in the DeFi lending ecosystem, where it's possible to sort of submit your real estate-backed tokens and get access to DeFi lending. So this will become highly attractive, and I think a huge opportunity and innovation in itself when it becomes available over the next year or two. First, we have to make assets liquid, then it becomes possible to use them as collateral for lending. That's it for me, and it's my pleasure now to give over the microphone to Gabriel so he can start hosting the panel. And you can find us at our stand next to track 2 if you want to hear more about tokenization. So, thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Gabriel. I work with Klaus at DigiShares, and I'll be the moderator for today. So I'll let the 3 other panelists introduce themselves. We'll start with Laura and move to the end.
Thank you. My name is Laura Pamatian. I've been in real estate and development for 20 years, working on pre-construction on that side of the industry. And I pivoted into the blockchain space about 3 years ago, helping owners, developers to implement AI and blockchain into their real estate projects.
Scott Purcell, founder and CEO of Fortress Blockchain Technologies. Not a real estate guy, but I know a few things about technology and blockchain. My company provides financial, regulatory, and technology infrastructure for blockchain innovators.
Michael Flight, been in real estate since 1986, primarily institutional real estate. Made a pivot in 2018 or 19. We started looking to raise funds outside the U.S. on blockchain, and so we created a product called Liberty Real Estate Fund.
Thank you. So let's start with the technology and its benefits. We'll start with you, Scott. Why should a real estate developer, real estate fund tokenize their assets?
Very large question. The blockchain is a ledger. Right now, everybody uses other 2-column ledgering systems that were popularized by the Medicis in the 1400s. The blockchain is an update on that. And so anything that is digital winds up eventually going on the blockchain or being accessible via tokenized authentication from the blockchain. That includes healthcare records. California is already starting to tokenize DMV records and car titles. So it certainly includes real estate. Tokenizing an asset makes it much easier to maintain, makes it easier to control, makes it easier to transact, to buy and sell, to settle transactions. For real estate, imagine a world with no title companies. Imagine a world with no very light legal on a transaction from changing ownership. Imagine a situation where renters can more easily make payments and where liens and things can be clearly seen and clearly cleared quickly without bureaucracy or regulatory overhang. So the blockchain is a new ledgering system as real estate title and other records begin to be tokenized, really clears up the industry and creates a whole new swath of innovation and acceleration.
Anybody have anything to add to the benefits? Something, a use case that they're excited about, or?
I think blockchain really is going to help investors. I'm primarily interested in securities and raising capital, and it really creates a lot of investor optionality for investors. So for example, if they did a typical syndication with me, it's a paper syndication, they'd be stuck with me for 5. My mother was actually in a deal she couldn't get out of for close to 40 years. So with the investor optionality, it allows investors to not only trade their securities, but also you can potentially pledge them as collateral, and there's a whole host of things. It's also going to help sponsors like me maintain your cap tables and a number of other different things so that you can have a better relationship with your investors.
Yeah, Laura.
I just want to add that there's this really important social cause around tokenization also, right? Community involvement, allowing tenants potentially, right? Your community to participate in your real estate offering. So there's returns potentially to your tenants that live in the building, and therefore they're going to keep better care of the building, et cetera. So there's that aspect to tokenization as well.
Sounds great. Thank you. So it sounds like, increasing the efficiency of transactions, increasing liquidity, and making the investor experience much better, and increasing participation, democratization are all fantastic benefits. Laura, if I'm a head of a real estate company and I want to tokenize my assets today, what do I do?
Yeah, I would start with assembling a really great team. For any project, that's probably the most important aspect, is having those that understand your real estate offering. Potentially a project manager, someone like myself that can walk that project through, usher it through every stage of tokenization from the offering, to the option of secondary liquidity. I think also having a really great legal team that has done this before, right? You don't want your legal team learning on your dime, right, about tokenization and how to create that type of offering. I also feel that obviously having a great technology provider. The technology is really important, not just for digitizing the assets or migrating traditional securities onto blockchain, but that a provider that understands real estate, right? That understands the complexities of the cap table, real estate cap table, how to manage that once those securities are on chain. And, potentially you could have a broker dealer involved, or a transfer agent, potentially a marketing company. There's a lot of aspects of the offering that are very traditional. From there, creating the offering, making sure that your business model is ideal for tokenization, right? That it is, the option of liquidity is important to the investors. Online capital formation, how are we going to fund that? What strategies are we selling tokens? Are we selling investment shares? What does that look like? Is it real estate? And then also the digitization, bringing all that information onto blockchain, like I just said, with your technology company, and then having a proper strategy for your secondary market liquidity, having the option and knowing that in advance who the right partner is for giving your investors that optional liquidity, right, on an alternative trading system. I think that kind of covers the majority of it.
Thank you. And
yeah.
Klaus, at DigiShares, you've seen many projects. What are some of the best practices or advice that you would have to someone that wants to tokenize their assets?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say we cover globally, right? We have clients in more than 40 countries, so we are aware of regulations in many countries, and actually, we really like the U.S. regulation within tokenization. So to many of our clients, we recommend that they work out of the U.S. as jurisdiction. So of course, it's important to have a good legal partner and to make sure that you are compliant. But in the U.S., we have at least 7 or 8 legal partners that can facilitate such a service. Then it's good also to have a good advisor, good consultancy partners that can help structure the project for you. And I would say in our system, you can choose among a number of configurations. So we have, for instance, a partnership with Fortress here on stage that allows you to have very safe custody both of crypto and fiat currencies, right? So there's a number of recommendations that we typically go through with new clients that we sign up.
Thank you. And Michael, obviously you were one of the first to tokenize real estate assets. That's why some of us call you the godfather of real estate tokenization.
Wow.
What's your advice, and what have you learned in your...
That was the Forbes crypto editor, and he said, we need a name for you. He goes, I'm going to call you the godfather. Like, you just call me that because I'm old. So, but anyway,
grandfather.
one of the the larger issues, and just with anything, but especially with tokenization. And I know Klaus doesn't want to hear this, but the tokenization part of it is probably the easiest. The structuring part of it is probably the harder part. So it's not only structuring it legally within your jurisdiction, especially the United States. And I have a lot of people still come to me and say, now that the SEC is going after crypto, your business model is really going to have some problems. I'm like, no, we're following the same SEC regulations that have been around since 1933. But one of the other issues that a lot of people don't really think about is you need to make sure that your financing partner, if you're putting financing on a deal, your financing partner has to be okay with a change of ownership if the tokens start trading. So there's a whole host of other things that you really need, not only securities attorneys, but you also need deal structuring attorneys. And most importantly, you need, especially if you're going to do non-US investors investing into the US, you need accountants that will help you structure those structures. But after that, we're still really excited. We're in the first inning of this. And at some point, I've got relationships with probably more than 500 capital raisers, and all of them are looking at this because, number one, it's going to help them, issue securities more efficiently, but also have better relationships and give their investors extra options.
Thank you. And Scott, you have a lot of experience with the whole compliance aspect. Obviously, Fortress is a trust company, a regulated entity. What would you say about the U.S. Regulatory environment? I mean, so DigiShares has a booth here, and we've had a lot of people come to us, and one of the things that people say is, is this compliant? The headlines are bad about the blockchain industry. Should I be doing this? What would you answer to someone with those concerns?
There's a lot of confusion about it, and a lot of lawyers are confused. A lot of regulators are confused, lawmakers. But the reality is that delivering ownership of something in a tokenized manner, whether it's fungible or non-fungible token, or we can start getting into that, but is if I invest in a real estate deal and he gives me a piece of paper that represents my fractional ownership in that deal, the paper is not his security. What's a security is my investment in that deal. The paper just represents that. If he sends me an email instead of a piece of paper with a PDF attached, that represents my interest. The PDF is not a security. If he tokenizes it and sends me an NFT or a fungible token, that NFT or fungible token is not a security. The security is what I invested in, and probably the SPV, the LLC that he set up. If I own a piece of real estate, and like my wife owns a bunch of apartments that she rents out, and I decide to put the title in trust, not into an LLC, but in trust in this case, and the ownership, the beneficiary represents his interest in that trust with an NFT, that is not a security. So you really have to look at what it is you're doing in the use case. If you're investing in something, it's a security. It doesn't matter if you're holding an NFT that represents or reflects your ownership in that. And if you own an apartment or a house that's in an NFT that the title is held in trust, that way you don't have to go to the city or state every time you sell it. You just transfer the NFT to somebody, super easy. That's not a security. So the regulatory issues here are actually pretty simple. People are just overcomplicating them.
Yeah, so Laura, you would like to add?
Just to add, I mean, Scott makes a really great point in that these are digitally wrapped, right? The idea that it's very different from cryptocurrency, and that you have crypto where if you aren't in control of those assets, right, they could disappear to someone else if they're stolen or lost. But if for some reason your security tokens, right, that are backed by your real estate are misplaced or transferred as an accident or stolen for some reason, they're just burned and reissued. So there's a very secure aspect that is in place here when we're talking about real estate-backed securities and digitizing them on the blockchain.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah, and I just want to, one of the other issues is the secondary market. So right now, secondary markets are really thin. And one of the great things is that DigiShares created realestate.exchange to, so you're looking at one of the guys that has primarily built out this entire industry, and that's Klaus here. And this guy, the payments system, I mean, so these are like really two early blockchain movers, and basically created this industry. But Klaus not only created the tokenization part of it, but now they're moving into crowdfunding. They're also moving into the real estate exchange for secondary marketplace. So maybe you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's one of the key benefits of tokenizing an asset is providing liquidity optionality to investors. So Klaus, could you tell us a bit about why you decided to launch realestate.exchange?
Yeah, we actually prefer to have, we like the white label business model where we don't sort of directly tokenize anything ourselves, but rather provide infrastructure to others. Because it's very, very scalable and it's not so legally complicated. So we were actually waiting for several years for someone to launch an exchange for real estate, but at the end decided to do it on our own to just make sure that the industry gets started, because there is a lack of liquidity in the space, and we didn't really see anyone coming forward with an exchange, particularly for real estate assets that could be useful for all the many companies that are tokenizing assets. So every time we speak to, I would say 90% of all the clients we speak to are interested in getting their assets traded at some point. I think it's the number one use case in the industry that we can turn real estate into a liquid asset. And it's exciting for us that we are now finally, after much development, much legal work, able to launch the exchange in Q4, most likely in the US. So we are working under the license of a company called Texas Capital, broker-dealer at ATS. So we are able to compliantly trade securities in a tokenized form. Thank you.
Absolutely. So maybe we can start going to some of the questions here. So has any of you ever worked with real estate tokenization in Canada, rules and regulations being different? I know that, DigiShares has a couple of Canadian clients, so it's definitely possible to tokenize assets over there. I don't know if anybody has anything to add on that.
Most of the Canadian securities laws are very similar to the U.S. securities laws. So
it should definitely be possible. Let's see, challenges of interoperability, and that's maybe something interesting to talk about. So Ethereum, at least at DigiShares, we see a lot of activity and projects happening in the Ethereum ecosystem. It's very well positioned as the first mover to be the ledger that people use for smart contracts and tokens. What's your opinion on Ethereum and maybe some other competing chains? I don't know who wants to start with that.
Blockchains are like religions. Everyone's got their favorite, and everyone you talk to, their chain is the best chain. And you're generally not going to win that argument. The reality is that Ethereum has by far the vast majority of developers working on it and development, and that includes what are called L2, layer 2 chains, which are like Polygon with Matic. So if you're looking to do something new, you should just stick with the thing where all the developers are and all the people are. If you want to go to Solana, Cardano, any of the hundreds of other chains, great. If you have the developers, go for it. The key thing is, can your users, whoever the end person, whether it's an investor or it's a renter or it's an owner, whoever that person is, are they going to be able to get it? Are they going to be able to receive that tokenized asset or that tokenized security from you? And if it's on HBAR, Well, how are they going to get it? What wallet takes that? What wallet supports it? If it's on Ethereum, every wallet supports it. Every dashboard supports it. So it also depends on which standard you're minting under, because you want to be able to, if somebody steals it, get it back, right? Or same with securities. Securities got to maintain the ledger. So there's, a lot of issues to consider, but generally just stay with my advice, just stay with the primary one or the L2 like Polygon, because that way the fees are less when people transfer. Whereas on Ethereum, the gas fees, the transaction fees tend to be pretty high.
Thank you. So we'll go to Michael and then Klaus.
Yeah, the way I explain it to people, and some of you that weren't around in the 1980s might not understand this, but it's the difference between VHS and Betamax. Betamax was the, much better technology solution. So there could be some better technology solution out there, but the large majority of developers are developing on EVM compatible chains and ERC compatible tokens.
Klaus, you had a comment on the...
Yeah, I think that Scott and Michael said most of what I wanted to say. I think the question goes into the issue of interoperability, and I would say working with different chains and so on. And it is a real challenge, but I think we are seeing maybe 95% of all projects tokenizing on Ethereum. So in fact, in relation to the chain itself, it is mostly interoperable what we see. We are chain agnostic and support 6 to 7 different chains, so we can tokenize the different chains, but it's correct what Scott is saying, right? You want to have sufficient support for different wallets. You want to have sufficient liquidity for the stable coins on the chain. You want to have custodians working on the chain and so on. And really, Ethereum has the best support for any of those choices. So even though it's a little bit more expensive, and for real estate transactions, that doesn't matter so much, Ethereum is normally the best choice, I would say. Then we are using different protocols across Ethereum, which is an issue also for interoperability, but it's sort of started to converge a bit. And there's also still no standard for decentralized ID, but I think that's also going to standardize over the next few years. And anyone tokenizing on Ethereum now can easily sort of upgrade their tokens later on when standards change, maybe at some point. So I don't see it as a big issue.
Thanks. So a question for you, Laura, maybe from the Q&A feed. So how does the physical deed transfer? Can you talk about the deed, the title, and the link with tokenizing the securities?
So that's a really great question, and there's a lot of there's a lot of different. When I say tokenization to someone like Gabriel, he envisions a certain way to apply tokenization to the space. When I say tokenization to someone who is transferring real estate product from one person to another in its entirety, they see tokenization as a completely different, something completely different, which it is, and it's both. So being able to tokenize real estate and transfer real estate product from one person to another, we can do that through tokenization. The way that we do real estate transactions today is a very lengthy, antiquated process. There's a lot of repetitive processes in the transaction. A lot of that can be streamlined if it is written on blockchain, and being able to track that title as it transfers from one person to another, we can eliminate a lot of fraud, right?
You can eliminate title insurance.
I wasn't going to say it, but yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but one of the realities is that's why I primarily work with securities, because right now when they talk about transferring title, they're basically transferring the ownership of an LLC or an SPV. And I am more skeptical about whether title is it's eventually going to go on blockchain, but you have to deal with every county. For in the United States, you have to deal with every county. And so that's a lot of political patronage jobs. You have to deal with title insurance companies who pay a lot of lobbying fees. And then you have to pay, to deal with like real estate brokers who are also some of the largest lobbies, in each individual state. So I'm skeptical as to it'll probably be the last thing to go online, but I could be proven wrong. But there's a lot of political pressure pushing against something where things transfer immediately, and then you get into the whole bearer asset. Whether your actual possession is actually possession of title, like versus a cryptocurrency where your actual possession of Bitcoin is possession of Bitcoin.
All right, so we're running out of time. Maybe just one last question with a quick answer. There are some questions on the feed about NFTs. How do you see NFTs fitting into the real estate tokenization ecosystem? Scott.
Well, one thing about when NFTs not being security, and it's funny, a lot of people are like, NFTs are securities. And from a real estate perspective, I had a video of Josh Altman from $1 Million Listings saying happy birthday to my wife. And so I minted an NFT, so it's in my wallet and her wallet. An NFT of Josh Altman saying happy birthday to my wife, not a security, not in any way, shape, or form. So the question is, it makes transactions easier, as you were pointing out. It makes capital raising more efficient. How you track it based on the different Ethereum standards that are within the technology that you provide. A lot of this infrastructure is here now, starting to emerge, starting to mature, the trading systems, everything about it, but also then the ownership of it. So it's really an amazing frontier that we're entering.
Thank you. So we have 15 seconds left. There's a question about the standards. Is it ERC20? I'm going to answer that in 5 seconds. Generally, a enhancement of ERC20 is used, such as ERC 1404, for example. All right, that's it. Thank you to the panelists, and thank you for joining.
Thank you.